Captain Pike's decision to become the Melty Man is flawed. So Strange New Worlds is coming up. It's got me thinking about Captain Pike's dilemma. I've always liked Pike as a character, even back in TOS. So as we know by now, Captain Pike is about to have a horrible accident, where during a training exercise, he saves a bunch of crewmen and gets flooded with Delta rays. Whatever they are, leading him to become the Melty Man, where he'll spend the rest of his life sort of in a chair with a blinking light that says yes and no.
You know why I've come, Captain. It's only 6 days away at maximum warp, and I have it well planned. I have never disobeyed your orders before, Captain. But this time, I must. I know.
Pretty horrible way to go. However, bit of solace in that Spock will find a solution to this. Spock will save the day, steal the Enterprise, and take him back to a planet called Talos 4, or is it Talos 5? One of those. Where he'll spend the rest of his days in a kind of a dreamlike state, where he's back to normal and lives out his life with the love of his life. A matrix of sorts, but he eventually will have a fulfilled life.
Chris, do you want to go there? Mr. Spock, would you care to take Captain Pike to the transporter room?
Now, one of the cool arcs for Pike throughout Strange New Worlds is the fact that he knows this is about to happen to him, right? The way he finds out about it is in Discovery season, I think it was 2, where he goes to a Klingon monastery and puts his hand on some sort of time crystal nonsense where he sees what's about to happen to him. Now, this brings into question a few things, right? About how captains react to time travel, breaking timelines, the temporal prime directive. Most captains tend to push back against timeline stories where they're told by their future self that a certain event is going to happen, and the only way to make sure an event doesn't happen is by following their future selves. Most captains push back against this, and I think rightly so. Picard, when faced with this dilemma, pushes back against that. Inventor Rasmussen, where he wants to know what course of action to take to save a planet. Rasmussen refuses, mainly because he's a fraud and doesn't know the answers to Picard's questions, but Picard's argument is that his future hasn't been written yet.
Every first-year philosophy student has been asked that question since the earliest wormholes were discovered, but this is not a class in temporal logic. It's not theoretical, it's not hypothetical, it's real. Surely you see that.
I see it all too well. But you must see that if I were to influence you, everything in this sector, in this quadrant of the galaxy could change. History, my history, would unfold in a way other than it already has.
Kirk has to be physically held back by McCoy when he tries to save Edith Waller's life because he's fallen in love with her and he wants to change the future.
What is it? McCoy, he's a...
No, Jim!
However, he doesn't think twice about doing it when he has to go back in time to grab some whales from San Francisco to bring forward in the future and talk to the whale probe.
How long is this bay?
About 60 feet, Admiral.
Can you enclose it to hold water?
I suppose I could. You planning to take a swim?
Off to the deep end, Mr. Scott.
We gotta find some humpbacks.
Humpbacked people?
Whales, Mr. Scott, whales. About 45 to 50 feet long. About 40 tons each.
Which, for some reason, is able to talk to whales. What was that all about? Like, are whales a spacefaring civilization that just chose to live on Earth? Why is there a spaceship talking to whales? Did anybody ever figure this out? Fucking weird movie. But Pike has a very easy out here. All he has to do is not go to the training exercise and tell the crewmen not to turn up on the day. Sorted. Now, the problem with that is that he's visited by future Pike, who tells him that if he does that in every conceivable timeline, Spock dies, and that he has to sacrifice himself and become the Melty Man in order to save Spock's life. Now, Pike doesn't have any issue in sacrificing himself to save others, right? He's a very compassionate captain. He's very duty-bound, he's very honourable, believes in sacrifice. His style of command is very different than the rest of the captains. So he's currently accepted what future Pike has said and is going to sacrifice himself for the other crew members and let the current timeline play out. Now, Janeway destroyed the whole universe to get her whole crew home. Not a bother. Couldn't have given a shit. From the point of Janeway getting her crew home, we're all living in a completely different timeline. Janeway probably killed billions. But this isn't a Janeway video. This is not a Janeway video. Janeway didn't give a shit about timelines. She wanted to save Chakotay and Seven because presumably they could break her out of the brig. So future Pike tells current Pike he has to go through with this, okay?
Time is, it's complicated. But the monk showed me something simple. Every time we change the path, he dies. And he's got things to do.
But here's the problem with it. The point is that Pike now has to save Spock because Spock is instrumental in peace negotiations with the Romulans. But when the accident happens to Pike, presumably he just retires from Starfleet. He can't be a captain anymore. So everything after that accident, Kirk taking command of the Enterprise, Spock becoming his first officer, none of that would change. So all Pike has to do is not go to the training exercise, not sacrifice himself, and just resign from Starfleet that day and disappear. That keeps all timelines intact. Kirk then goes back to the Enterprise, Spock becomes first officer, and the rest of the timelines play out as normal. Like, he's taking the word of future Pike, and I think this should be questioned. Now, it makes for a great ethical dilemma within the show because Pike knows he's only got 5 or 6 years left to live. But when future Janeway came back to the present, Janeway just told her to get fucked. And she went, no.
And then, of course, there's Tuvok. What about him? You're forgetting the temporal prime directive, Captain. The hell with it. Fine.
Kirk didn't give a shit about bringing whales back, and God knows what happened when that happened. Like, we don't know anything about the whales. Space whales could be the greatest threat to the galaxy since the Borg, and Kirk just brought them back. Captains don't really care about timelines, and I don't think Pike should either. Pike's destiny hasn't been written yet. That was Picard's point.
Now, I have sworn to uphold it. But nevertheless, I have disregarded that directive on more than one occasion because I thought it was the right thing to do.
If future versions of yourself kept popping into your life every day, telling you to take a different path because this will happen and that will happen and that will happen, that would stop you living your life based on your decisions. Like, imagine your future self came back and said, don't take this course of action because this will happen or that will happen. You're taking your past self's autonomy completely away. So now Pike, he's lost his ability to make decisions for himself because now he has to go through with turning himself into the Melty Man because of what he's been shown in a time crystal thing that he shouldn't believe anyway, and that a future version of himself came back and told him. He's way too trusting, and I think he should save himself. Take the precautions of allowing Spock's destiny and Spock's career in Starfleet and all of that stuff. But if he's so worried about what Spock is going to do in the future, just resign on the day of the accident. But like, now there's so many timelines in Star Trek, I don't even know which one we're living in. And by the way, all of the events past Endgame and Voyager mean that we're now living in a completely different timeline anyway, because Voyager was supposed to take 25 more years to get home. And yeah, so, I mean, Janeway blew up the whole universe. Janeway blew up the whole universe. Just put Janeway in the brig. Anyway, Pike should save himself. That's my opinion.